My name is Beverly Johnson. I was the first African-American to grace the cover of Vogue in August 1974. Some of you weren't even born, but I'll tell you, it was a very exciting career. I decided, my father was a steel laborer, my mother was a nurse. I have 4 siblings. I'm in the middle. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, on one of the Finger Lakes, Lake Erie, so we know all about snow and cold. And I wanted to go to college. I was an athlete. I was a swimmer. I swam on the all-black swim team in Buffalo, New York. And, you know, we were very serious, you know, as little girls. We had on our mother's bathing suits pinned up. And we had on our mother's bathing caps, you know, with the flowers all on top. And then we go to play like Lockport, and, you know, and they come marching in, and they're racing red, white, and blue striped, you know, suits with the Speedo caps. But we didn't care. We got in there, and we swam our little hearts out. And sometimes one of the girls swam right out of her bathing suits, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter. We were there to win. And I really think that that really taught me about discipline and competitiveness. So I never wanted to be a model. I was the ugly duckling, and you guys all say, yeah, they always say that to supermodels. But I have pictures in my book to prove it. And you're going to go, yeah, she was right. She was ugly. I put those pictures in here. You can't Google these pictures in this book. But I wanted to tell my story because in the African-American culture, my grandparents and great-grandparents, and because of our history with slavery and very, very tough times, they didn't really share their stories with us very much. We had to kind of pry it out of them. And I decided that I wanted to tell my story. And so I decided to talk about my childhood in the 70s and 80s. So you can imagine what that book is like, what this book is like. The 70s, I lost a lot of brain cells. But I tell you, I did go to Studio 54 one day, but I stayed 3 days. Seriously, 3 days. You have to read about it in the book. But I decided that if I did my memoirs, I was going to talk about everything, warts and all. And it was really interesting for a little girl, you know, from Buffalo, New York, and, you know, having, you know, taken this path of modeling. You have to read about how it happened, because I was in school at Northeastern University. I really wanted to go to Northwestern, but I didn't get in. And I wanted to be a lawyer. And I had an incident at a boutique in Buffalo where this woman kept running around the store saying I should, you know, be a model, I should be a model. I thought she was really out of her mind because I was going to college like the rest of my sisters and brothers. And then when I got to school and I was teaching swimmer at the Roxbury YWCA for $28 a week, and I was going to stay there for the summer, I lost my job, I didn't have a job, and the girls from New York City, you know, in Boston, Northeastern, they said, why don't you just model? And I was like, what is this modeling thing? What is it? They said, they went and they got a magazine, true story. They opened it up and this girl was standing there with her hands on her hip. She said, they make $75 an hour. I said, for standing there with their hands on their hip? Are you kidding me? My father made $75 a week as a steel laborer. And I had kept this telephone number from this woman, Mimi, in Buffalo, with the number to a connection in New York City at Glamour magazine. And that is how it happened. My father said, there is no such thing as modeling, you mean streetwalker. I said, no, Dad. Dad, I don't believe that these women in this magazine are streetwalkers. I mean, they're models, they're making 70. So my mother, against my father's wishes, came to New York with me, and the rest is history. And honey, after that, I don't know what I was doing. I'll tell you why, because I was in a world way over my head. And I talk about that. I talk about the Halstons, the Andy Warhol, you know, the Keith Richards. I talk about, you know, drugs and rock and roll. I talk about being thin and that whole thing about being pencil thin as a model. We didn't drink water. We thought water was fattening. Seriously, if we saw a model drinking water, we'd be like, oh, no, she didn't drink that glass. That's her, that ain't me. And you couldn't get thin enough. I mean, it was very, very dangerous. And so I wanted to tell those stories, and then, about the husbands, the ex-husbands that just won't get the fact that they're ex. You're an ex, that means go away. And I got wrapped up in a lot of situations that were way over my head, and I shared these all with you in this book. On a more serious note, I wanted to write the book also, and I don't know if I would have written the book if my mom is not presently suffering with Alzheimer's. And because a lot of these stories in here would have hurt her very deeply, and I don't know if I would have done that, but I must say that my mom was the one who was responsible for being where I am today. And she held my hand through it all. So I owe my mom a lot. And anyways, when I decided I was going to do my memoirs, I said, I'm going to tell everything. So I decided that I was going to tell about this encounter with Bill Cosby. And the writer on this book is a journalist. Her name is Allison Samuels. And I told my story to her. And she wrote the story down, and this is in 2013. And we gave it to our editors, and I was really kind of like relieved. I had finally told this story about Cosby drugging me. She really wasn't surprised, which I was surprised that she wasn't, because she's a journalist. She had heard these stories before. And anyway, so we took the editor said, we can't put this story in the book. This is a legal liability. We can't do that. I was like, oh, okay, well, I told my story. In 2014, in December, as most of you know, the women came out and they talked about Cosby drugging and raping them. And I sat there watching these women tell their stories and realized that my story was very similar to theirs. And I knew they were telling the truth. And they were being re-victimized and criticized and vilified, and I said, I couldn't do it. My conscience and my principles made me write an article for Vanity Fair telling about my encounter with Cosby and how he had drugged me. And by the grace of God, I got out of there without being raped. So then I didn't know it was going to blow up the way it blew up, and then I get a call from the publisher about that Cosby chapter. We like to put it in the book. And I thought to myself, that's what the women have been trying to say all along. We've been trying to tell our stories, but you didn't want to hear it, and you didn't want it. But anyways, that's only one chapter in the book. And there are a lot of different chapters in the book, but I wanted to tell you that story. I also want to tell you a story about retirement. I had actually retired. I was on a golf course, waiting for my Oprah moment, what's my purpose in life. And it came in a way of a friend suddenly dying and passing away. And I thought to myself, okay, the clock is ticking now. What are you going to do? And I said, what I'm really afraid of? I'm afraid of going into business for myself. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. So I went into business for myself. I met a man who's an investment banker, Brian Milan, there he is, who has taught me the business. In the media silo of my business, the book came out of. But I have, hair extensions, I have makeup. You should see him talking about that, this guy off of Wall Street talking about makeup and hair extensions. It's very sexy. Very, very, very sexy. And I just want to say that I now understand that there is no such thing as retirement. I mean, that is just like a trick, I feel that I'm smarter than I've ever been. I feel that I'm learning things that I've never known about. And I'm talking about business and being a woman in business and entrepreneurial and how slow and arduous that process is. It's like brick by brick by brick. And it's like, I'm used to instant gratification. Take my picture and give me some money, okay? Take my picture and give me my money. But this is not that. It's like, really. But you know, what's really wonderful about it is when you sprinkle all these seeds, all of a sudden you see them growing. It's like, you get like this kind of like proud thing, you know, right? You know, I planted that, I did that, and guess what? You can't fire me because I wouldn't fire myself. It's mine. So I'm really on a wonderful journey. My daughter, I don't know if you guys know, she was a plus-size model, but she started off as a straight model, size 0. I never wanted her to model because when you read this book, you'll know why. But she, like most teenagers, that's exactly what she ran off and did. And she did it for about a year, and then she said she fainted in the elevator, and she said, you know what, Mom? I'm never going to let anybody tell me how I should look ever again. I was like, whoa, she's 18 years old. It took me to 40 before I could say that. Anyway, she went back to school. She got her BA and got her MBA, and then I got another phone call. Mom, are you pregnant? No, Mom, I'm not pregnant. I said, what? She says, I want to be a plus-size model. I said, why? I was just curious. She says, because I want women to know that they should love themselves the way they are. And I said, I raised that girl. I taught her something great. But anyways, I have 3 grandchildren. And Ava, 4, and David, 3, and Dean, 2. And it's the best time of my life. Everything they said about grandparenting is true. I mean, that's your reward for parenting. It really is. You didn't see that show, Beverly's Full House, on the Oprah Winfrey Network? It was about mother and daughter relationships. It was a constructive reality show. I even thought it up. I was the executive producer. Why did I do that? I didn't even think we had a problem until we started doing the show. But so many women really identified with this show, the mother and daughter relationship. But anyways, I'm going to be doing other shows, another show. I believe in constructive reality shows. And I've just got so many things on my plate right now. And I'm just, you know, at a time in my life where all of these miracles and blessings just keep coming my way. So if I can say anything, it would be say yes to all the possibilities. That we live in an abundant universe and there's enough for all of us. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. I will be signing books. You can buy the book. You are not getting out of here without buying my book. I want you to know my story because most people think they know me because of the covers and this kind of celebrity facade. And when you read my story, you're going to say, oh my God, she's just like me. This is about a woman in her 20s, making it to the top in New York. And Chicago's a great city, but you know what they say about New York. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. But it's at a price. It's at a price. Anyways, I'm going to look over to my business partner, Brian Milan, to see if I've forgotten anything, because if I have, at Beverly Johnson 1 is my Twitter handle. And thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the evening.